This is Keyed In with Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. And now, here are your hosts, Max Rabin and Brent Jackson.
Keyed In Podcast is a pre-recorded show. We are preempting our normally scheduled show this week so that we can bring you the most up-to-date and relevant information for our State of the Market episode. Hey everybody, welcome to the Keyed In Podcast. I'm your host, Max Rabin.
And I'm Brent Jackson.
So here we are. We're doing a show today. It's a State of the Market show. We had some guests lined up for today's recording, and due to some unforeseen circumstances, we'll have to rebook them at a later time. So it's just you and me, Brent. Just that's us today.
And the market and what's going on.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the market a little bit. Our last State of the Market, we were still talking about multiple offer situations and how hectic everything was coming through the winter. And now things have changed a bit.
Slightly.
Yeah. So the market's slowing down. Not like for our market, not super slowing down. It's still, there's been some aggressive deals lately, some aggressive multiple offer situations that I've been involved in, but it's just not as many.
And to that point, I think listening to our previous guest, Ann and Nate from Washington Fine Property, I've been using a lot of their talking points when people ask me the question, like, how's the market? Because that's a great answer. It's a great response to which market are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're a one bedroom in DuPont Circle, it might be a lot different than your fee simple $1.2 million house in Chevy Chase.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, let's qualify. What are you really asking me here?
And it could also have to do with the strategy for the listing and the seller and the listing agent, what they're trying to get out of the situation. If they're pricing it below what they think it'll sell for to generate multiple interest versus more something on value or maybe even a little high to test the waters. So again, though, it's just, I think that a slight increase in inventory along with the increase in interest rates is sort of our natural recipe for slowing down.
Yes.
Right.
And it's interesting hearing some of the, hearing and seeing different points in the field, right? I was on the phone with a developer last week. His prediction was like 10 to 15% reduction in price, which I think was low. But he had a bad experience. He brought on a new property up in Capitol Hill. It should have been priced at 165 or 1695. The agent got him down to 1.5, promising multiple offers going back up. And I told him I never would practice that because you never know if you're going to get multiple offers,
Totally.
even in a hot market.
Totally.
I'd rather price it correctly and get multiples versus like promising, trying to get to that in number. So ended up selling for 1.5, 150,000 off, which is where his 15% came in. And I'm like, let's pump the brakes here. Let's maybe just switch up your agent next time and call Rob and Brent or Max.
Well, I would say I agree with you. I am extremely wary of entering any listing appointment with the notion that if we price it at this, we should have multiple interest. It's just you can't predict that. It doesn't matter if you're even within the range of what you think to be an extreme value. You do not know what other circumstances will surround the days that you put it on the market and anything. And I think that there are certain types of properties that you could certainly underprice, or I don't know if that's the right word, but price at super value where people would pop up and try to make a purchase there, almost like an auction, if you will.
Right.
But that's also a very precarious situation for the seller if it doesn't get as high or get to the value that you guys originally thought it would get to. So probably still better to price it on value, and take your licks in the market in terms of if it takes a couple weeks to sell, if it takes 3 weeks to sell, maybe it does take a price reduction. That's kind of a normal situation. It's just not what we're used to after the last 2 years. But
Right.
it is kind of a normal market when things are like that.
We can get into some of the numbers here in a minute, but just a little bit more storytelling here. The spring was robust for us, and I can tell you time and time again, price point versus price point, neighborhood over neighborhood, we were able to set records across the board. So like down in Navy Yard, where we do a lot of business, we set a record at 1.5. That had an appraisal issue, came in 100,000 less. We sold another one at 1.5, had an appraisal issue because we set the bar, 100,000 higher.
Mm-hmm.
We sold a third one. That one came in high because we had now two sold homes on the books.
Yeah.
Harbor Square, we just had Harbor Square is over in Southwest DC.
Yes.
We got something under contract for 2 million. It closes, knock on wood, here soon. That's the highest thing ever
That's
sold over
huge.
there was 1.6.
Hmm.
Interesting fact point on that is it went through an appraisal cycle where the first couple of appraisers said no to it. I met the appraiser on site and he was like, nobody wanted this because $2 million in a co-op in Southwest was challenging. So I overbid it, got the person to come, or he overbid it. He got the call. Seasoned appraiser came out, knocked it out of the park. I gave him comps from Watergate.
Hmm.
He used that and a couple other things up in Upper Northwest. That, the scale was like so different because the price point over there was like 1 million.
Sure.
So we're like way over the board. But just in general, it's been a robust spring for us. But now we're getting the calls like, wow, you guys work magic on that number. I want to list my house or my condo or co-op this summer, this fall.
Hmm.
Can you match that number? And it's like, wow, that's the conversation. It's a little scary right now.
Agreed. Yeah, and there were some major numbers in lots of different sectors of our market here in DC that people look to and they're like, my neighbor got this and I should get this. And it just might not be the case going forward.
Right.
That's all. But here's, we pulled up some articles here. So here's one on CNBC.com. Home listings suddenly jump as sellers worry they may miss out on the red hot housing market. This is from May 26th, so not long ago. The key points: the supply of homes for sale jumped 9% last week compared with the same week 1 year ago, according to Realtor.com. And real estate brokerage Redfin also reported that new listings rose nearly twice as fast in the 4 weeks ended May 15th as they did during the same period a year ago. Again, this is from CNBC, May 26th. So listings increasing. You're seeing that in your submarkets in DC, also more listings in the different submarkets.
Again, I go back to I'm seeing it in some of our submarkets, right? Like Navy Yard, there's still, I think that there's one off-market listing. Capitol Hill, there's still not a lot in Capitol Hill proper.
Sure.
If you bounce back over here to like downtown DC, we do see a lot of stuff in condos and fee simple homes coming online. There's some new projects coming up as well.
Yeah, I'd say I've definitely seen an increase in inventory in some of these submarkets that I've been active in, especially with the buyers. Couple more houses per week than what we were used to. Certainly not as many tales of multiple offers as we just stated. So I'd say that the national increase we're seeing that same thing here. Again, for now, right?
For now.
For now. In case you're joining our episode in the middle here, we're doing a state of the market. We're talking about a little bit of a market slowdown across the board here. Maybe not as much in DC as some other places, but certainly increase in interest rates and slight increase in inventory that'll take care of business. So this is another article from CNBC. This is from May 31st, about a week ago. Home prices surged over 20% in March as interest rates also rose, according to the S&P Case-Shiller. Nationally, home prices were 20.6% higher than they were in March 2021, according to Case-Shiller. And the Case-Shiller's 10-city composite rose 19.5% annually in March, up from 18.7% in February. And the 20-city composite saw a 21.2% year-over-year gain, up from 20.3% in the previous month. Those are really massive numbers in the real estate market.
They're huge.
They're huge in any market.
Yes.
But real estate is wild.
Yes.
So let's just bring it down to earth here in DC and in the market we've been working in. That was kind of the effect of some of that superheated multiple offer stuff for that 3-month period, basically like January, February, March, those new contracts coming in. Escalation clauses regularly. Now, again, pricing is key here, but there might be some quote unquote underpricing, but regularly seeing escalations 200, 300,000, like in houses priced in the 1 to 2 million range, like huge escalations.
It was crazy. And I heard a couple stories, like there was one at $500,000, there was one at $1 million, I think in Wesley Heights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of those, it's insane what was going on for that 3-month time span.
That's probably like the hottest market you've ever worked in.
The hottest market I've ever been working in, right? So I think you've been doing this longer than I have. So I guess maybe 2004 and 5. How did it compare?
Just the amount of money. I mean, prices were inflated then, which is kind of funny to look back and you see what some people paid for certain properties in that era, and you're like, people were paid that much back then? That seems like ancient history. Did
Right.
we even have that much money back then? We didn't actually. There wasn't that much money back
Right.
then, but people were still paying crazy money back then. Um, and but no, that I've never seen anything like that last 3 months in the 20 January 2022 to March. That was wild.
Yeah, and I think for me, I got into the industry, I think 2004 or five. So I mean, I came in during that, but I wasn't a seasoned agent. I was like just trying to get my feet wet and learn the neighborhoods, and small town guy from West Virginia. I didn't know the city at all, so I was in it, but I wasn't really living it. So it's interesting to see what's happening now with this market. It's been so hot for 2 years. We just mentioned in all these articles we have in front of us and everything you read and hear, it's like the market's softening. But is it really softening? It's softening from like 3 months ago. But if you look back before the pandemic,
Hmm.
the inventory, I pulled up some numbers earlier, right? So in the Mid Atlantic region, new active listings were at 25,000 compared to 47,000 for the 5 year average.
Hmm.
If you look at just the DC Metro, again, this is for April, 5,600 new active listings compared to 9,300. So we're still running at half the inventory,
So
which
now
to
it's
me,
from what was the reference?
it's the so it's 5,600 April new active inventory for the DC Metro.
Yeah,
The
versus
5 year average for April is
gotcha
9,300. So you're
9,300.
running about half. And
Hmm.
that's both for DC and the Middle Atlantic region. And if you read some of these articles, it's the same. So to me, that's the underlying tone. How can the market crash when there's still not enough
Right.
inventory to supply the demand that's out there?
Yeah, definitely. The term crash is an extreme term. I couldn't say that either. It's not
Right.
not that effect.
Yeah.
It would take a lot of inventory.
Yeah. I think it goes back to like 3 months ago. Your neighbor got 20% over with 30 offers, and you got stuck with one full price offer with one home sale contingency or something, and you get pissed off. You're like, well, my neighbor got this. Why didn't I get that?
Yeah, well, let's take it down to the personal level then. I mean, I've been working with this buyer, and we looked at this house in Old Town Alexandria a few times. Old Town Alexandria is a super popular market. The house has been on the market for $1.4 million for 30 days, in a location that should move just fine if it's priced appropriately. And at first, she wanted to do a home sale contingency for the place she currently owns, and this was like over a month ago, and I was like, no way, just forget about it. That's like a waste of time. But now that time has passed, and the agent's calling me saying, "What's up with your buyer?"
Right.
I said, "We can put anything we want on paper right now. Let's put it to the test, because this is the opportunity to do something like that for that particular listing."
Right.
That didn't exist a month and a half ago, really. So
That's a good story. And I think for me, what I'm telling buyers, and again, it's pretty much the fee simple home buyer. But it's like it's if they want to go in and they're reading some of these articles and they think they're going to get a deal, let's go in 5-10% off list price and load it up with contingencies. I'm like, let's still play it out through the weekend, give it 7 days, maybe 2 weekends on the market, and then let's test the seller. I can call the listing agent and have an open book conversation with them to see if they're open to contingencies, open to a lower price. The sellers are still in the mindset of it's a seller's market and I'm going to get multiple offers going over my list price. So, we're predominantly listing heavy agents. It's interesting when we price something right and then we get an offer that's, 3 to 5% off of list price and they
mhm,
get upset at us. And we're
yeah,
like, don't get upset. It's the market that we're in.
right,
We've got an active buyer that wants your home. You want to sell.
yep.
Let's find a meeting of the minds and, put the deal together.
Versus, here's another situation that came up recently. This is for a condo in Capitol Hill that was definitely underpriced, and it's like a condo. Um, I don't know why they priced it the way they did, but and it's totally a she's a great agent, probably maybe just following her seller's instructions. We never know. There were, I think, 10 offers on this condo, of which we came in first, like over 100,000 over the asking price on this
Wow.
condo. Which, and then you were thinking like, now maybe an appraisal issue for this condo, but we didn't get selected. So they went with the second highest offer. I don't know why exactly, but for whatever reason, they went with the second highest offer. That person already kicked out on the condo docs. Maybe they got cold feet and felt like they shot the moon on this. And then there was another buyer in the mix, a cash buyer, who was also asking a bunch of questions. So they may be coming back to us.
Oh, wow.
And I think actually my guy, this is like literally happening as we speak. I think my guys still would be happy to take it, but it's just like there's a lot of enthusiasm there, like a little wild, and people sort of pulling back on that once they realize, uh-oh, I actually might be buying this for this price.
So on that situation, would your buyer be getting it at the price he offered with the escalation, or like a new price?
She wrote back to us that she would offer it back to us at the price that they had the contract for. So it wasn't our full escalation price, but it was still high.
Right.
Still
Over
very,
list, but not as high as his
definitely
cap.
over list, yes. So I don't know what his reaction is going to be. Before, that's another important thing. When I know this has happened to you, where you might be the second or third choice for a seller, and they come back to you. Before I even make that call to my buyer, I need to be absolutely sure we have like a real sort of window,
Right.
because you do not want to get their hopes up and then say, "Oh, just kidding. The other person decided to keep the contract," and then it's just
Yeah.
you feel very stupid.
It's we've been on that a couple of times, and it's always irritating. I'm like, do you guys have a signed release? Because to me, it's like as soon as somebody else wants it, that re-engages the buyer that's under contract.
Yes.
They're like, oh, okay, that person wants it. I'll go ahead and go through
Yeah,
with the deal.
yeah. I'll
And
just
then you're
finish
just
this
like,
contingency.
what the world?
Yeah, exactly. That's the total buyer psychology.
But it's also because we've had it happen to us a number of times on the listing side, and it's always in the condos because they have their condo doc review period, and depending on what property manager you're working with, sometimes they get them to you like next day. Sometimes it takes the 10 days to get it to you. So that buyer has a get out of jail free card for up to 2 weeks possibly, depending when they get it to you. So a lot can happen in the market. A lot can happen with their life. They lose their job. The market crashes in the stocks, or the real estate market changes, and they're like, you know what? I think I've overpaid for this. Then you got to start making the phone calls. And if you do have to relist it, it's always a black eye. Even we can dance around it and like play with the tax record and relist it as a brand new listing. It's always like a black eye on that condo.
Right. I would say also one other anecdote recently, where I had representing the buyers. They were very interested in the house, and we were told that another buyer did a pre-inspection on the house and was writing an offer, and we did not have time to do a pre-inspection based on the timing and everything. So I said, I think for this one, we can just go ahead and put a normal offer in with an escalation and an inspection contingency. I think they'll still probably accept the inspection contingency on this particular house. And we were accepted, but the other offer never materialized. So my people offered full price for this house. And then, to be honest, I went back and really reviewed the exact, like the comps for this micro location. And while the house was newly renovated, I just felt they were definitely pushing the envelope with the price for this. I'm not saying we would have run into an appraisal issue, because there are plenty of things to pull from, but I had to make that statement to my buyers. And not to add pessimism to a deal. We don't like to do that, but I just had to tell them, I said, without that other offer in place, we offered this in good faith, and now you're under contract for this. I just want to gauge how you feel about it. And they're like, well, thanks for bringing that up. They were still sort of happy about the deal. But then when they went and looked at their numbers, the rates, that was like a couple weeks ago when the rates were just a little higher than they are now.
Right.
And they had gone up 1/8 of a point overnight, which isn't like a huge deal. They were certainly still qualified for this, but they're like, we really feel like we were definitely pushing the price on this, but we appreciate everything you told us. And they backed out of the deal. They just said straight up, like, this is too expensive with this rate at this price. And so they set their sights lower, and they're under contract for something else now, like 200,000 less. So today's show, we're doing State of the Market. It's just me and Brent. And we're talking about the market's slowed down a little bit. Interest rates are up. Inventory's up a little bit. There's another article in the Wall Street Journal recently about the aftermath of waiving a home inspection. Here is the little sort of second headline. Someone you know bought a lemon and now it's too late. Here's how to help them cope. And I read through the article, and it was kind of like a little cheeky about, just tell them, oh, that won't be so expensive. You know, it's like it's from the advice of the friend. But have you had any situations like this after that crazy market where people may have waived the inspection or done like a quick pre-inspection, anything like that, where you got the call back from the buyer and said, wow, we had no idea that XYZ, like, let us know.
So story, not necessarily about a home inspection, but it's the aftermath of buyer remorse, getting caught up in the market that we've been
Hmm.
in. And I'll never forget it. It's about a couple of weeks ago, we sold a condo up in Mount Pleasant. Uh, Same situation. You go through tons of people through this first couple of days, hard to get in. Open houses are packed. Buyer fell in love with it, so I thought, and they're all excited about it. And then the day before closing, I start getting emails because they're reading all of this news where the market's going sideways or it's going down. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I hadn't seen him in like months since we went under contract. When we got to the pre-settlement walkthrough, he almost had tears in his eyes.
Mm.
He's like, I do not want this. He was with his wife, who the wife was excited and wanted to play us and going forward. But he's like, is there any way for us to get out? And I'm like, unfortunately, no. I'm like, you're not looking to flip this. So and it's a great house, 2 levels, 2.5 bathrooms, or 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, had parking, 1,500 square foot private terrace. I'm like, you guys can park yourselves here for a couple of years. If you don't like it, then we can cross that bridge when we get there.
Sure.
But like, just there's nothing we can do about that right now,
Right.
because you're not going to walk away from your earnest money deposit. But it was the first in, I don't know, 20 years ish, almost 20 years of doing this business, that I actually had that situation where the day of closing, the husband just did not want to close. He did not like the place. But it's that buyer frenzy. Everybody's like excited. They want it. You have to make a decision in 20 minutes.
You're worried the market's continuing to go up. You're going to miss out.
And he missed out on like 5 other places, but he was also notorious of, I think we were in a contract for 2 or 3 other places, and he ended up walking on the condo docks.
Mm.
So some buyers are just never going to be happy. Love the guy to death, but that was the first for me.
There are certainly personality types that, for buyers in those situations where it is tough to make them satisfied, it wouldn't matter what the situation is. And nothing is perfect in real estate. Even we're just walking through a very expensive house the other day, a $39 million house. I mean, I think we were all walking through there. There were some very nice features of that house. There are also some things like, that's how they decided to do that. So nothing's perfect.
Nothing's perfect. Yeah,
so,
that's exactly right.
But yeah, I will say maybe I'm a little more conservative after doing things all these years and like understanding and knowing what it's like to own real estate, like to physically own real estate. And when you see people like really gunning for things and like really extending themselves, you start to you do worry. I never try to like interject my own thought processes into those situations. It is not my decision. I'm there to facilitate this transaction and make it as smooth as possible. That's
Right.
my service. But there was some wild stuff there, and some people have a different attitude about it. Some people are like, well, we'll be here for 10 years and we're okay with that. We know we're probably quote unquote overpaying right now, and the market will take care of itself. And we can certainly look back even a couple years and see people who might have been buying something in 2020 who thought they were paying a fortune in 2020, and now look,
Right.
here we are. So,
and back on the home inspection, I mean, I have had a few people call, but I think you and I both do a really good job with the buyers that were waiving their inspection. That's the difference between like a really good agent and a less seasoned agent, because you do a good job explaining the risk associated with what you're buying and what could be a limit, right? So we do a good job explaining that up front. And from time to time, we've had calls in the last couple of years where an HVAC got shot or there was a leak in the roof, but we have trusted vendors that we then were able to shine like, hey, we are here as a resource. Here's our trusted plumber. Here's our trusted roofer. Here's our
Right.
HVAC person. Whatever you need, we're here to help. We don't run away from the deal.
well, Brent, you mentioned that your buyer, you said you saw tears there. I think you said you saw tears.
I think I did see tears. I think it took off and ran up the upstairs.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be there for the.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
I know that. I know. But there was another article. This is from Urban Turf, our friends over at Urban Turf. This is from June 2nd. Was that yesterday? The home buying process is bringing Americans to tears. I'll just read a couple lines. The stress of buying a home is getting Americans very emotional, according to a new survey. The survey released today by Zillow finds that 50% of home buyers cried during the process of buying a home. That's a lot. That's some real crying.
That's a lot of crying. And I'm just wondering, I'm looking through this and I'm wondering what's the context with that? Are they crying because they lost it? Are they crying because they bought it? Is it just the stress?
Well, hold on. So It goes on to say Gen Zers and millennials, many of whom are first-time homebuyers, are far more likely to cry at least once during their home buying journey, Zillow stated in a press release. More than 65% of Gen Z buyers and 61% of millennial buyers cried at least once when going through the process of purchasing their home. So maybe it's these younger buyers, younger than us, I should say.
Younger than us, yes. It's an interesting article because,
We know
like,
there's no crying in real estate.
they're crying in baseball. So that's funny. I see crying on the other side of the table. Uh, Again, we're listing heavy, and usually 1 or 2 times a year there'll be a seller that's had something for like decades. It's in a family
Sure.
trust or whatnot, and they get very emotional because they're now parting with this asset that's
I've
been
seen
in the
it.
family
Yep.
for forever.
Yeah.
So I have seen crying. That's usually the day of closing. They're at the closing table. They're shaking, crying, and take care of my baby. It's been in the family for 60 years.
I've seen that too recently. And yeah, so maybe there is some crying in real estate after all.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I know the lady that sold our house. She was too emotional. She couldn't even go to the closing with us because she knew that we were going to gut the inside.
Right.
But we closed at Counselor's Title. Love Chris Darby and Tom Muldoon, Counselor's Title, and they said that she was a mess. Like, she came in tears. She had to be escorted out. It was a mess. But she came here as a staffer from California. She was in there from like 72 all the way through. She kept one of the 1 bedrooms for herself, rented out the other 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a tough sell for her.
Wow.
Not a Gen Zer though.
Definitely not.
So Max, just one other point here that we haven't really talked about in depth are the interest rates rising. We've kind of alluded to it, but we haven't actually brought it out. Mortgage applications are down across the board. Interest rates are rising. Some are predicting just over 6 by the end of the year, which I think is also going to play into effect inventory, because what's going to happen is maybe your best home is the home you're in. If you're in a 30-year fix and a 3.5% interest rate, you don't need to leave. You just wanted to leave. You wanted something new. I think that's going to also help keep inventory down because those people could just stay in place versus like going across town to somewhere else, or if you have to go across country, that's totally different.
Well, I think that the staying in place aspect is uh it's always affecting the market. It's what is it going to cost me to get out of here? What is it? What am I getting out of here for? So that's always going to affect it. I guess I would agree with you. I mean, if interest rates are too high and it's pulling the market back a little bit, that will probably negatively affect the inventory too.
Yeah.
But I think that's the objective. The objective is to like calm it down, right? Because
Correct.
it's inflation. It's the inflation control. From what I understand, I'm not an economist. I'm just saying that when you have the prices of everyday goods going up exponentially, you have to sort of control the lever somewhere. And they do that with the interest rates. The money's too cheap. It's like, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire, especially when the market was running that hot.
Right.
I mean, 20% year over year increase in housing is wild.
It's insane.
So,
And we have a lot of cash buyers. So I think 1 in 3 or 4 of our deals are all cash. So for our side of the table, we don't hear a lot of interest rate rising complaining.
Yeah.
And I also think that that's price sensitive. I think if you're at 500,000,
sure,
you're going to feel that interest rate, whether it's a half point or a full point, much more than a buyer that's at $2 million.
It's still the majority of the market, though, is like the retail level market, people borrowing 90 or 80% LTV. That's still
Right.
most of the market. So those are the people that are most affected by the other aspects of inflation too. So yeah, our wealthier cash buyers who can make these decisions very quickly and are purchasing and selling things at a different level, that's always a separate market. Those are different. And some of these properties that we have worked around for years and years are now in that echelon that we would never have thought, like the standard, or maybe a nice detached colonial and Chevy Chase with an addition on it. Who knew that was a $2.5 million house? Now it is, right?
Yeah, I go back and think I should have bought a lot of this stuff. I remember when I first got in, you could buy a house for like $300,000 in LaJoy Park, which is now like 1.2. We have a house under contract in Navy Yard. It's a legacy home, which is a home that's built prior to all these new ones.
Mm-hmm.
And someone picked it up for $350. We have it under contract for $750.
Sure.
And this is a 10-year span.
Well,
So it's interesting how this market's changed for the better.
yeah, I mean, but you can say that that's pretty much across the board for DC. Row houses in Mount Pleasant, Glover Park, North Cleveland Park, all of those locations, for years and years, everything was very much around the same price. And like coming around like 2000 to 2005, those houses were like 350,000, 450,000.
That's crazy.
And then they were suddenly 750, and people were like, whoa. And now they're 1.2, 1.5. And in Mount Pleasant, I mean, regularly see prices like 1.7 and up. So
this goes back to it's a sociological thought or not, but was it the 70s? The town got burnt during the riots.
So, yeah, after 68.
Yeah, so it's like, and then this is an international town with a lot of money and power. So you think that we're going to be right there on price per square foot with Boston, New York, LA, London, what have you. And there's a lot of movement, people coming from DC, people going to DC. So it's, DC is a very interesting town.
Definitely.
Any summer plans?
Summer plans, dropping the kids off at sleepaway camp in a couple weeks, and spend a couple nights at the Greenbrier. I know you're familiar with that. And then a week in North Carolina at the beach. That's summer plans. What do you got?
We'll be in Florida for 4 weeks, spread out over the course of the summer. So not all at once, but we're going in 2 weeks, and then once in July and 2 weeks in August for tennis camp.
I could go to tennis camp too.
We can get you down there. They have big boy camp.
I'm sure. Big. I like it.
Sleepaway camp for Max.
Well, thanks for joining us today. And keep listening. You can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And Brent, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks for listening to Keyed In with your hosts, Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. For more information on selling your home, find us online at KeyedInPodcast.com. Remember to subscribe to Keyed In on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Keyed In Podcast, at Rabin Max, and at Brent E. Jackson. And follow Max on TikTok at MaxwellRabin_properties.